The notion that global warming is a war by the mainstream media against Christianity is a concept that has been circulating in certain circles, particularly among conservative and evangelical groups. This idea suggests that the media's emphasis on climate change is not solely driven by a concern for the environment, but rather by a hidden agenda to undermine Christian values and principles. While this claim may seem far-fetched to some, it is essential to examine the underlying arguments and motivations behind this assertion. One of the primary arguments made by proponents of this idea is that the concept of global warming is often presented in a way that contradicts Christian teachings. For instance, the emphasis on human-caused climate change can be seen as contradicting a biblical account of creation, which places humans in a position of dominion over the earth. Furthermore, the idea that humans are responsible for the destruction of the planet can be perceived as a challenge to the notion of human exceptionalism, which is a core tenet of Christian theology. By highlighting the role of human activity in causing climate change, the media is, in effect, implying that humans are not the pinnacle of creation, but rather a destructive force that needs to be restrained. Another argument made by those who see global warming as a war against Christianity is that the media's focus on climate change is often accompanied by secular humanist worldview. This perspective emphasizes the importance of human reason and science over religious dogma, and is often seen as being in direct conflict with Christian values. The media's promotion of climate change as a pressing issue can be seen as a way of promoting a secular agenda, one that downplays the role of faith and spirituality in favor of scientific rationalism. By framing climate change as a scientific fact, rather than a matter of debate, the media is, in effect, undermining the authority of religious teachings and promoting a secular worldview. In addition, some argue that the media's coverage of climate change is often laced with moralizing language, which can be seen as a form of eco-theology. This perspective implies that the natural world has inherent value and worth, and that humans have a moral obligation to protect it. While this may seem like a harmless notion, it can be seen as a challenge to traditional Christian teachings, which emphasize the importance of human salvation over environmental concerns. By promoting a form of eco-theology, the media is, in effect, creating a new form of moral authority, one that is based on a secular understanding of the natural world, rather than religious doctrine. Furthermore, the media's emphasis on climate change can also be seen as a way of promoting a form of global governance, which can be perceived as a threat to Christian values. The idea of a global response to climate change, with its accompanying regulations and restrictions, can be seen as a form of secular totalitarianism, one that undermines individual freedom and autonomy. This perspective is often accompanied by a sense of paranoia, some arguing that the promotion of climate change is a way of creating a global dictatorship, one that will ultimately lead to the suppression of Christian values and principles. In conclusion, while the idea that global warming is a war by the mainstream media against Christianity may seem far-fetched to some, it is essential to recognize that this perspective is rooted in a deep-seated sense of unease and mistrust. The media's emphasis on climate change, with its accompanying secular humanist worldview and moralizing language, can be seen as a challenge to traditional Christian teachings and values. However, it is essential to approach this issue with nuance and balance, recognizing that the relationship between Christianity and environmentalism is complex and multifaceted. Rather than seeing the media's coverage of climate change as a war against Christianity, it may be more productive to engage in a constructive dialogue, one that recognizes the importance of faith and spirituality in addressing the environmental challenges of our time.